This morning, I want us to take on a project of going through the text and giving it some context, bringing context to the text. Because sometimes when we read our Bible, we're just reading the surface and we're going, oh, this is what it means, this is what it means. I'm just reading words and I'm putting context to it from what we understand from our living today. But this particular passage is written to a church, an actual church like ours, that is being persecuted, absolutely persecuted. Like imagine we walk out of the church today and a police officer walks past and grabs three of us and goes, congratulations, you are now going to be killed for the entertainment of the rest of the town. I mean, I don't know how many of us are showing up to church next Sunday, but they were. Like, that's heavy. That's the context that this letter is written in. Like, they're showing up to each other's houses, and that's the context that this letter is written in. The persecution was rife, and they weren't scattering, they were continuing. So we need to give some context to the text. So I'm going to be talking to the letter to Sardis. And Sardis was a really interesting city. It had twin mountains, and this is pretty rare in the area of Asia Minor where Sardis was. And Sardis is in modern-day Turkey. I visited Turkey 10 years ago this year. I was lucky enough to go to Ephesus, and I loved Ephesus. We spent the day in Ephesus. I was in the Colosseum, and we were right up the top we were up at the back fence, where you weren't allowed to go any further. I'm looking for the hole. I'm like, can we get arrested? And if you get arrested in Turkey, what happens? And we thought about that, but they had really big guns, so we went, no, we shouldn't go through any holes. So what we could do, you could hear all the people that were standing down, on what would be the platform. You could hear them speak, and they weren't yelling or shouting, they were talking, and you could hear them clearly. It was so amazing. And then there was a choir that sang, and oh man, it blew me away. I'm like, this is cool. And so then I'm like, I have to test this out. I walked around to the other side while they were singing, acoustics perfect. I'm like, and this thing's falling apart now, and it was still perfect. I'm like, I do not understand. I'm out in the open, and this thing is just amazing. But Sardis had these twin mountains, the Acropolis and the Necropolis. And the Acropolis is where you would put all your important buildings up on the top of the mountain. So all the things that you want to defend, if an army was to rock up and attack your city, you would bring all your people up to the necropolis, and all your important buildings would be up there, and you would defend your city. That's where you would have all your defenses, and you would make sure that you're going to defend that area. Because attacking a city up a mountain is really hard to do. It's almost impossible. It's so difficult. So you'd put all your important stuff there, and all the houses and that might be down around the city. You might have all your basic stuff, but all the important stuff, it's up on top. Now, having to walk up and down, they've probably got really good legs, let's face it. They're going to be fit as. But all the basics, all the farms and all that, it's down underneath, but all the good stuff, it's up on top. Now, on the other side of the mountain, the necropolis was basically their graveyard. Sardis had this really weird fascination with death. In fact, they elevated death so much that their twin mountain, instead of creating another city for the living, they basically created a city for the dead. And so their graveyard was elevated. They had this weird fascination with death. So what should have been something of prominence was their graveyard, which is just strange. Very, very strange. So this fascination with death. Now, some more context that we need to understand, and it will help you if you read the rest of the book of Revelation. It's Revelation, by the way, but we always tend to say as Aussies, we either shorten names or we extend them. And so I've always tend to say Revelations. Oh, have you read Revelation 6? It's like, where did the S come from? I've added an S to it. Like, no, it's Revelation 6. It's John's revelation. But there were 5 major earthquakes in AD 17, 19, 21, and 24. Like, that's a lot of earthquakes. They were pretty major earthquakes. But then there was a huge earthquake in AD 60. So big, in fact, that 1/3 of the necropolis fell off the back. 1/3 of it, totally gone. 1/3 of the necropolis fell to the front. And in fact, so devastating this was that 300 acres of the residential area of Sardis was covered by the front part of the Acropolis was just totally wiped out. Now that is a bad day for Sardis. This earthquake was so big, it was known right throughout the region. So when you read the book of Revelation and it's mentioning earthquakes, this is the earthquake they are referring back to. This earthquake was so devastating that the people will be saying, I was there at that earthquake. My cousin was there, or my uncle lived there, my auntie lived there, or we had family die in that earthquake. These are the things that we just don't know about. We don't know that these things happen, right? But it's really relevant to the book, to this letter. So the ancient city of Sardis was founded by the Hittites and then the Libyans, and it was known as Sard or Sepharad and then Sardis. And in the 6th century BC, Cyrus and the Persians show up, and this is Cyrus out of Isaiah 45, verse 1. This is what the Lord says to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I take hold to subdue nations before him, and to strip kings of their armor, and open doors before him, so that gates will not be shut. So Cyrus shows up. And he is going to lay siege to Cyrus. And the Libyans, they think they've got it set. They've got their Acropolis, and they're going to defend. And they defend for a couple of weeks. And they're sitting pretty. They're thinking, these Persians, they're going to give up because there's no way in. Until one day, a Persian soldier is astutely watching and sees a Libyan soldier falling asleep guarding the wall. And as he falls asleep, his helmet falls off and starts to roll down the hill. And he says, that's interesting. And the next moment, the Libyan soldier pops out of the hill, collects his helmet, and then as quickly as he's appeared, he disappears again. Persian soldier thinks there must be a secret tunnel. He's taken to Cyrus, and then they work out a plan, and under the cover of darkness, they go and find the secret tunnel. The army enters, and to the army's surprise, the Persian surprise, the whole city is asleep. The entire city is asleep. And that night, Cyrus is conquered. Conquered, because they're all asleep. Now you'd think that's a pretty amazing story if it only happened once. That's the problem. Because a reputation's hard to shake, right? Because 300 years later, the Seleucids arrived and they lay siege to the city. It lasts a little while until the Persians throw a dead donkey over the wall. And the vultures show up, start doing their thing, and they fly up and sit on the city wall. And one of the soldiers goes, there mustn't be any guards on this part of the wall because the vultures wouldn't go and sit there if there were guards. And so in the cover of darkness, they mount an attack on that part of the wall. They put the whole army over and they get in and the whole city again is asleep. And that night, for the second time, Sardis is conquered while they're asleep. Now there is context here. You'll see in a moment. We're going to read the scriptures and it will make sense. But a reputation can be very hard to shake. So let's get to the scripture, because we've given some context now of the history of Sardis. And without that history, the revelation and the letter just doesn't make sense. And there's some more context we're going to give. But if we don't have the context, we miss out on the depth and the meaning to this letter. So let's get into it. Revelation 3, 1-6. To the angel of the church of Sardis write, these are the words of him who holds the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know your deeds. You have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. Wake up. That makes sense now, doesn't it? Strengthen what remains and is about to die. For I have found your deeds unfinished in the sight of my God. Remember, therefore, what you have received and heard, hold it fast and repent. But if you do not wake up, I will come like a thief, and you will not know what time I will come to you. Yet you have a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their clothes. They will walk with me dressed in white, for they are worthy. The ones who is victorious will, like them, be dressed in white. I will never blot out the name of the person from the book of life, but will acknowledge that name before my Father and his angels. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. A reputation isn't always our reality, is it? We can look like we've got it all together. Sardis did. When the Persians showed up, they looked like they had it all together. That city looked like it was totally undefeatable. And for 14 days it was. They looked like they had it all together, but inside they were asleep. In fact, you could probably say they were dead. They were so comfortable. They were so comfortable with what they had and who they were that they weren't awake. They weren't ready. In fact, they had an army attacking them and they couldn't even see it. I mean, if our enemy were attacking us, would we be prepared? And we want to say yes, right? We want to say, oh, if my enemy was on my doorstep, I would be in battle mode. But our enemy is on our doorstep. There is an enemy on our doorstep. Are we ready? Are we awake? Are we seeing it? And it's hard. This is a really hard letter. But are we ready? Are we awake? And are we seeing it? We can look the part. We can look the part on the outside, but on the inside, are we okay? Because we can show up to church and we can put a mask on and we can say, I'm okay. I can do that on a Sunday for 2 hours. I can say, I've got it all together, my life's totally okay. But I go back home and my life isn't okay. And it's all right not to be okay. It's all right not to be okay. I want to make it a safe place. It's all right not to be okay. But what it's not all right to do is not to do anything about it. Because what we want to be is we want to be healthy. So when we go, I think there's something in my life that I need to work on, we reach out and we get help, or we get connected, or we do something about it, that we don't sit in that place and stay stagnant in that place. I really dislike, can't stand going to the doctor. Most men don't like going to the doctor, right? But I'm learning that if I have an issue, I will just say to Vanessa, I need to go to the doctor. Thank you. I will just say that, and that will keep me accountable, because she will keep me accountable of going to the doctor. And that way I know that that day I need to make the phone call to go to the doctor. Get an appointment and go and get things sorted out. Otherwise, it will be months before I go and do it. Because it will literally be months before I will go and do that thing. Because I don't like people touching me. I do not like being prodded. I do not like MRI machines. Like, I will fall asleep in one of those things, seriously. But just like, don't put me in. Oh, I'm going head first. Oh, like, it's not fun, right? I don't like it. But you've got to do it sometimes. But, just leave me alone. But you've got to, sometimes we've just got to do the things we don't enjoy doing. The church at Sardis had some of the look about them, but when you dug deep, the depth wasn't there. We can look like we're alive, but our spiritual depth inside is not healthy. Are we just showing up to church, or are we engaged with church? Are we engaged with the mission of church and the service of church? Or are we just showing up to make the church look nice? I don't think we're called to make the church look nice. That's not what we're here to do. We're here for much deeper reasons for that. I love the wake up piece in this. Wake up. I love that line. That's going to be my new favourite verse. Because as Aussies, we love that. Oh, wake up to yourself. I should have just named this next part. Wake up to yourself. But wake up and strengthen what remains. The people of Sardis were so comfortable they'd fallen asleep in their darkest hour. And we can get comfortable. It's a slow slip away. It's not quick, right? When we slip, it is not a fast slip, right? It's not like falling down a set of stairs. I watched an awesome video this week. I will laugh at people's misfortunes. It's my greatest weakness, and I enjoy it way too much. I am being completely open and honest with you now. You can judge me, and I don't care. I don't care. I should have brought it. And it was a toddler. It was a toddler, right? It gets better. The toddler falls down the stairs, right? And you know where the toddler got it from? Mum. Because mum chases toddler, and she then also fell down the stairs. And that was because the toddler falling down the stairs wasn't funny. It was the mother that fell down the stairs after her. And I did have compassion, because I thought, were they okay? But the way I see it is that the video made the internet, so they must be okay. That's the way I see it. Is that it made the internet, so they must be okay. That's the way I I know. But you know what? I help people at work all the time with injuries, so that's how I'm sort of justifying it. So, but I laughed, and it's not like when we slip away from Jesus, it's not like this. It's typically not like a falling down the stairs where 1 minute you're okay, and then literally you blink and you're not okay. That's not how it happens. It's a gradual, just a little slip, a little decision. I'm just not going to do that today. I just don't have time for that today. Oh, you know what? I'm just not going to make that a priority today. It's just too much work today. I just don't have time for that today. Maybe tomorrow. I'm going to have time tomorrow. But when we get our priorities all muddled up, that slip, and before we know it, it's not even like a 2 degree. We say, it's just a 2 degree. It's a 0.1 degree change over a year. And before we know it, we go, I want to make that change back, and it's huge to get back. It's the consistency that we have in our lives of walking with Jesus. And when we say, when we come back, the change is just tiny to come back to Jesus. It's not like we're going to take this huge leap back. It's just a tiny little step back. That's what excites me about that. It's just this tiny little step back. Whether you're busy, it's not the right time. It's just this tiny little bit back. I've been in this church for a long time. And I don't ever think I've ever seen the book of Obadiah quoted in our church. Ever. So, you know what? I thought it'd be fun to actually quote a bit of Obadiah. I know. It's just before the book of Jonah, if you've got your Bible. So we're going to throw some Obadiah up, because Obadiah is the only book that actually meant Sepharad, which is Sardis. And this book actually... John is referring back to Obadiah when he's writing some of his, Jesus is going back to Obadiah. And Obadiah is written to the city of Petra, which it was the Ebionites, and they were sort of family of the Jewish nation. So let's throw the Obadiah up. This is Obadiah 1, because there's only one book of Obadiah. It is literally a page. You can read it in around 5 minutes. That's Obadiah. There's all 21 verses of Obadiah. So this is Obadiah. See, I will make you small among all the nations. You will be utterly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you. You will live in the clefts of the rocks, and you will make your homes on the heights. You who say to yourselves, who can bring me down to the ground? Though you soar like the eagles and make your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord. If thieves come to you, if robbers in the night, what a disaster awaits you. Would they not steal only as much as they wanted? If grape pickers come to you, would they not leave a few grapes? But how Esau will be ransacked, his hidden treasures pillaged. All your allies will force you to the border. Your friends will deceive and overpower you. Those who eat your bread will set traps for you, but you will not detect it. There we go, Obadiah. Done. Whew, there you go. If you actually apply that to the people of Sardis, it's where they were at. They were people living in lofty places. They thought they couldn't be overrun. They thought nothing could ever happen to them. And all of a sudden, they'd been wiped out, not once, but twice. And here they are with a pretty scathing letter delivered to them. And it was harsh. We've got a couple of younger people up the back, so I need to talk this next part about some pagan worship that took place in Sardis. And without us knowing what took place, the last part of the letter makes absolutely no sense. Because Jesus starts talking about, you'll be dressed in white robes and you'll be walking with me in white robes, and and we all go, oh cool, so if I'm victorious, I get a white robe. And we just go, what does that mean? So I get a white robe if I'm victorious and I'm with Jesus. Okay, I don't know where the white robe come from, but all of a sudden I'm wearing white robes. Awesome. And I don't need to stay in my white robe, but if I've had a coffee and I'm driving in my car with my white robe and I bump it, am I still okay? Like these are all the questions, right? Like, what happens? Because we don't know the context. We don't know the context. Because we weren't there 2,000 years ago. We're here in Thirroul and the northern suburbs of the Illawarra. And we're coffee drinkers. And we're not after you get your white robe, right? Like you just don't want... You can't even have a cheese and tomato toasty anymore. Because if the tomato comes out, we're in trouble. So Sardis had a temple to Cybele, and this temple was absolutely huge. Like, this was a big temple. Like, even the ruins of it today that are still standing, some of the columns are absolutely massive. I was trying to get a measurement on it, and I was like, if you go and get to the temple and Google Earth, I love Google Earth, you can drop yourself, get your little human, drop yourself into the temple, and you can get the size of this thing. It is absolutely stunning, the size that's still there. And they had a myth of a goddess called Cybele. And Cybele was able to procreate with herself. And she had a grandson who was absolutely infatuated with her. So much so that he longed to sleep with her. And this sounds pretty crazy, but it gets worse. Cybele had no need for a man. And she constantly rejected him. And in a frenzied attempt to get her attention and affection, and to show how devoted he was to her, the grandson castrated himself and offered his organs on the altar as ultimate worship to her. Now, this is extreme. The issue with that is it created a festival, and every year 1 million people would show up to the festival at Cybele. Now, Sardis had 100,000 people living in it. Yes, they are. Humans are weird was the quote. And they are weird. But 1 million people would show up to celebrate this myth. A myth! Like we are weird as humans. And they would show up and they would dress in white robes and they would take a procession through the middle of town and they would then walk out to the temple. And the priests of Cybele would, what they would do before they would get in their white robes, they would basically encourage everyone to get blind drunk. Because you would need to get blind drunk to try and replicate the act of the grandson. And the priest would say, if you didn't replicate the act, because not many would, as you could imagine, but if someone did, then if you got the blood of someone that did on your white robe, then their sacrifice was good enough for you. And that showed your ultimate devotion to Cybele. Now that doesn't make any sense to us today. But it makes complete sense to the Bible verse that Jesus is talking about with white robes that are soiled. If we don't know that and the practice of the day, the letter doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Whatsoever. So let's read that again. Yet you have a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their clothes. They will walk with me dressed in white, for they are worthy. The one who is victorious will, like them, be dressed in white. I will never blot their name out I will never blot out the name of the person from the book of life, but will acknowledge that name before my Father and his angels. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Jesus was calling them to live differently from the followers of their cultures around them. Because it would have been easy to still show up to the festival. That was the culture. 1 million people showing up to your town? Your friends? Hey, come out to the festival tonight. We'll put a white robe on you. Just come and join us. Easy slip for them. Just come and be a part of it. It'll be fine. Jesus is calling us to live differently in our culture today as well. What are the things in our culture that's calling us to slip away? Because there's plenty. There's so many. We don't need the next big thing from a social influencer. There's so many. There's so many that they're trying to get their views up. But it's Jesus and his sacrifice on the cross that was enough. It was enough for them, and it's enough for us. So what do we do with all of this? What do we do with this letter? How does this affect us today? Because it does affect us today. It affects how we belong to the church as a spiritual family. We belong to Jesus, we belong to one another, and we belong to the wider church. I love what's happening in March, where we're all coming together. I love that we're praying for people right now, our 5. It's so good. Becoming like Jesus as we live out in our community. As we rub up against one another, particularly those that frustrate us, because we have people that frustrate us. There's going to be people in this room that frustrate us. But we just don't go, oh, this person frustrates me, so therefore I'm out. That's not community. That is not community. Community is us coming together. Even if someone frustrates you, they will wear the edge of that frustration off you. Because you will show up somewhere else and a similar person like that will still be there. That rough edge that is on you will rub off you as we live in community. And building his church. As we build together, as side by side, we build something greater than just what Pastor Rowan and Jill can build together. As what our staff can build together. It's as we come together and we build using our gifts, our skills, our talents, as we build for the Lord Jesus, we can build something greater than if we're just building it on our own. When we come together, we build something so much greater. But did the church listen? Did the church in Sardis actually listen? Did they get that letter? Did they learn from it? Or did they just go, oh, I'm offended by that. How dare you write us a letter so offensive? Did they just have a prideful heart and dismiss it? on the edge of the Cybele temple, a very small building. 2 small rooms were built by the church. Not a church, but a medical clinic to reach those that were engaging in the worship of Cybele. To provide medical help after someone had followed through with harming themselves. The church showing up, providing love, care, and grace. The same grace they'd received from Jesus. I love that. They weren't pointing out, going, you've done the wrong thing, you've done something stupid, why'd you do that for? Now look what you've done to yourself. What a mess you've made. They cared. Support, care, love, grace. On the edge of the temple, when you get on, I encourage you to get onto Google tonight when you go home, and you will see this little brick building, and it's tiny. In the vastness of this temple, it's in the back corner, and it's literally built onto the back of the temple. They weren't hiding. They literally went into it and went, we're here. Cybele, Cybele. 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 And it's right there. It's amazing. Oh, it's amazing. Amazing. And they were there. They weren't going, well, if you want help, you come to us. They went to where people were needed. And I love that. And that's what we're called to do. We're called to go. We are called to go. We can apply this letter today. So where are you at? I want to ask you this question. Where are you at today? Are you awake? Are you going through the motions? Or are you still in the COVID slumber? The COVID slumber is real. Are you awake spiritually? Are you awake spiritually? Do you need the wake-up call? Does the alarm clock need to go off and for you to wake up? Are you strong spiritually? Do you need strength? How are your spiritual practices? Do they need to be renewed? Have they gone stale? Have they just gone stale and you need some encouragement in them? Do they need to be refreshed? Do you need some new ones? Do they need to be rewarded? Are you connected to church, to a connect group? If you're not, come and speak to us. Come speak to Pastor Jeff, Pastor Jill. Come speak to me if you want to get connected. Maybe you have been called to start a connect group. Come and speak to us as well. Maybe that's on your heart. Maybe you need to pray about that. We need more connect group leaders. This one came to me this morning. Maybe you're in old white robes that have got stains on them. And it's time to take those old white robes off so new ones can come on. I'll get the band to come up. Jesus calls us not to just take this book and read it and go, move on. This book is a call to action. We can just go, that's another day in church. But today is an actual action day. Where are you? What are you going to do? Where are you at? How are you going to respond? Jesus is calling us to go. Go and step out into the chaos of this world and bring hope. And it may be something small, but it may be something kingdom changing. It can be in the small way that you live in the world. And it has a radical way in the difference of how you experience the world around you and how the world experiences Jesus also. We're going to take communion. And as we take communion today, I want you to take it in a new light. That the sacrifice that Jesus made wasn't just made for 2,000 years ago, but it's made for today, for this moment. So open up your communion. We want to remember that it's Jesus' sacrifice and no one else's sacrifice that we need to look for. His body that was broken on the cross. That we don't need to do it ourselves. Or we're not looking for someone else to go and do it and then try and get their sacrifice to apply to us. We're looking towards Jesus. I'm going to take the bread. Thank you, Jesus. That's a really good scone, but that really needs some cream with it. Oh, it's down. I'm going to take the cup. Remember, this represents Jesus' blood. We're not needing anyone else's blood on us. We're not needing soiled white robes. We're going to be dressed in white with Jesus. Take the cup. I'm going to pray for you. If you want prayer today, you want to be spiritually stronger, you want to meet Jesus, you want to step out, you want to be renewed, you want to be connected to a connect group. If you want prayer for anything today, we want to pray with you. I want to pray for you right now. Jesus, I thank you. I thank you that you care about the local church. I thank you cared so much that you reached out and wrote letters to them to encourage them. You've seen them, where they were, what they'd been through already, and what they were going through at the time. And you encouraged them to continue. And for Sardis to wake up. And for us today, Lord, we take the message you gave them in their context. And we apply it to ourselves and we say, Jesus, where is it that you want us to wake up? What is it in our lives that we're missing, that we might need to wake up? That dark corner where we just keep hiding that thing that we just go, I don't really want to deal with it. I don't want to call the doctor on that. Just want to leave that there in that dark place. Jesus, shine your light on that today. Prompt us today, Lord.